Hello, Sophia! Okay, we are back in Exodus. And remember, we've had the Nile turn to blood, and we've had frogs, and we've had gnats. And every time, Pharaoh at first is like, oh, make it go away. And then he says no, and he hardens his heart. So now we're going to find out what the next thing is that God is going to do. So we're in verse 20 of chapter 8:20. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning and confront Pharaoh as he goes to the water and say to him, 'This is what the Lord says, let my people go so that they may worship me. If you do not let my people go, I will send swarms of flies on you and your officials, on your people and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians will be full of flies, and even the ground where they are. But on that day I will deal differently with the land of Goshen, where my people live. No swarms of flies will be there, so that you will know that I, the Lord, am in this land. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. This miraculous sign will occur tomorrow.' And the Lord did this. Dense swarms of flies poured into Pharaoh's palace and into the houses of his officials, and throughout Egypt the land was ruined by the flies. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, 'Go, sacrifice to your God here in the land.' But Moses said that would not be right. The sacrifices we offer the Lord our God would be detestable to the Egyptians. And if we offer sacrifices that are detestable in their eyes, will they not stone us? We must take a 3-day journey into the desert to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, as he commands us." Pharaoh said, "I will let you go to offer sacrifices to the Lord your God in the desert, but you must not go very far. Now, pray for me." Moses answered, "As soon as I leave you, I will pray to the Lord, and tomorrow the flies will leave Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Only be sure that Pharaoh does not act deceitfully by not letting the people go to offer sacrifices to the Lord." Then Moses left Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did what Moses asked. The flies left Pharaoh and his officials and his people. Not a fly remained. But this time also Pharaoh hardened his heart and would not let people go. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go and continue to hold them back, the hand of the Lord will bring a terrible plague on your livestock in the field, on your horses and donkeys and camels, and on your cattle and sheep and goats. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and that of Egypt, so that no animal belonging to the Israelites will die.' Then the Lord set a time and said, 'Tomorrow the Lord will do this in the land.' And the next day the Lord did it. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but not one animal belonging to the Israelites died. Pharaoh sent men to investigate and found that not even one of the animals of the Israelites had died. Yet his heart was unyielding, and he would not let the people go. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, 'Take handfuls of soot from a furnace, and have Moses toss it into the air in the presence of Pharaoh. It will become fine dust over the whole land of Egypt, and festering boils will break out on people and animals throughout the land.' So they took soot from a furnace and stood before Pharaoh. Moses tossed it into the air, and festering boils broke out on men and animals. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils that were on them and on all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said to Moses." Whoa, we have a lot. So we had flies, then we had a plague on the animals that caused the animals to die, and now we have boils. You should make your mom Google boils and show you what they look like. They're like huge blisters, but they're full of like pus and blood, and they're gross. And they were on the people and the animals. So what do you notice? I noticed a couple of things I think are interesting. One is that even though God knows that Pharaoh keeps being stubborn, he is just giving him chance after chance after chance. I think God wants Pharaoh to do the right thing. He is going to have to get harsher and harsher and harsher with Pharaoh, And God is going to use that as a way of showing not just the Egyptians, but also showing his own people how powerful he is and that they can trust him. But he is always giving Pharaoh chances. Every time Moses comes, he says, this will happen tomorrow. In other words, you have a whole day, Pharaoh, to think about this and make a decision. This doesn't have to happen. You got 24 hours of warning. Every time, Pharaoh hardens his heart and is stubborn and won't, and the plague has to happen. So the first is the flies, and the flies kind of devour everything. It says they destroy the lands. Flies will destroy the crops. So now the people have food insecurity. They're not going to be able to eat. Next thing is a plague on the animals. And again, before, remember the first couple of plagues with the frogs and the Nile turning to blood, that affected everyone. But now God is taking it a step further and saying, I'm protecting the Israelites. So they're not going to have the flies, and they're not going to have the livestock, the animals that die, and that's going to be a sign to you that I am really focused in on punishing you, Pharaoh. I'm sending you a specific message. So that way you can see that my power is such that this isn't just a random occurrence. Because if it were just random, it would hit everyone, right? But by showing these people live basically side by side, right? The Israelites live very close to the Egyptians. That all of these terrible things are happening to the Egyptians and they're not touching the Israelites. That should be a sign to you, Pharaoh, that this is intentional. God is doing something to teach you a lesson and to just keep pushing you. And every time we see Pharaoh starting to let up and now trying to make compromises, right? At first it was like, you can't go, you can't go, you can't go. Now he says, how about you make your sacrifices here? And Moses is like, no, we can't do that. We need to go to be able to do that. And Pharaoh's like, okay, you can go, but you can't go very far. And you have to be able to come back. And we're going to see that keep going on. That Pharaoh never really wants to give up power. He doesn't want to give up. Hi, say hi to Sophia. He doesn't want to give up his authority and his power, right? I think another thing that's interesting, think how many people's names we know. We know Moses, we know Aaron. Pharaoh is only ever just Pharaoh. Even though the Bible could have told us maybe it was Ramses, maybe it was another king. He doesn't tell us. I think it's because the Pharaoh, it might have been more than one Pharaoh. We don't know how long this lasts. But also because the Pharaoh just becomes a symbol of every person and every society that is willing to harm other people and other societies to keep their own power and their own comfort. So it's kind of a way of saying all of us can be Pharaoh. At some point, some of us will identify or will feel like the Hebrews who are being oppressed. But at some point, we probably have to look and say, where am I being a Pharaoh in my own life? Where am I putting my own pleasure and my own comfort and my own power above someone else's and harming them? So we never know Pharaoh's name because Pharaoh can be any of us. So another thing that is tricky, and this is going to sound really kind of like esoteric and which is just a word that means like kind of obscure. But I think you're big enough for this. So remember how we talked way back in Advent about how the Bible's not written in English. It's written in Hebrew and Greek. And they not only have different vocabularies, they have different tenses. So translation becomes a challenge. What we see is that in the first few plagues, we use an active verb. An active verb in English as well as in Hebrew means the subject does the action. So Pharaoh hardened his own heart. Then what we start to see is more of a passive, his heart was hardened. And some translations, like the one that we're reading, the NIV, they translate that as God hardens Pharaoh's heart. But that's not actually what it says. It just says his heart was hardened. That's called passive voice, where the subject receives the action. So the heart is the subject, and it's being hardened, but it doesn't tell us by who. And I think it's really important because our actions become our habits. So the first few times, Pharaoh is making a choice. He's saying, I see what's happening and I'm choosing to harden my heart. I can feel my heart saying, this is probably the right thing to do to let them go. And I'm saying, no, I won't do it. And after that, it becomes a habit. He doesn't have to do it intentionally. His heart just hardens because he's getting used to doing it and he doesn't have to even think about it anymore. It becomes a habit. Our good actions become good habits and our bad actions become bad habits. And I think it's a good idea during Lent, especially to think about what are my bad actions and how can they lead to bad habits, which means I should change them before they become bad habits. And what are my good actions that can lead to good habits? So some things are really easy, right? Brushing our teeth becomes a habit. If we do it every morning, then we just know that we get up in the morning and we brush our teeth, and it feels weird if we forget to do it or if we can't do it, because that's part of our habit, and that's a good habit to have. Other times we have bad habits. And those bad habits, they might be something really kind of innocent, like just leaving our shoes, not wiping off our shoes before we enter the house, or not putting on our seatbelt as soon as we get in the car. But if we have to train ourselves to do that, right? Those become habits only after they become actions. So the first few times we have to say, oh, I need to wipe my shoes on the doormat or leave them outside the door before I come in. Or when I get in the car, I need to put on my seatbelt. But after that, it becomes a habit where we don't even have to think about it. When I get in my car, I put on my seatbelt without even thinking about it. I don't have to say to myself, put on your seatbelt. I just do it as a habit. It's just become a good habit. Pharaoh had bad choices that became bad habits. And those bad habits are going to really hurt him. The same thing can happen to us, just like good habits reward us. So think about what your good and your bad actions that lead to good and bad habits could be. Love you. See you tomorrow.